Agenda,
So moved.
and a second?
Second, and I guess I don't need to amend the agenda at this stage, but I will be pulling the resolution under item 5A.
Okay. Board Member Carrillo?
But I still want to discuss it, because that resolution.
We will.
Even though it's being pulled?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So, Board Member Carrillo? Aye or not?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye. Anyone disapprove? Okay. She usually catches that. Did you know? Oh, yeah, for the audience, okay. Board Member Trujillo will not be present at the meeting. Okay, board announcements. First, Ms. Beja?
Good evening, Superintendent, board members, audience. My name is Alma Bejar. I will be doing the translation services in Spanish. Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Alma Bejar. Voy a hacer las traducciones en español. Si gusta mi asistencia, voy a estar hacia atrás. Gracias.
Thank you. Board Member Carrillo, and then Vice President Cashman.
Yeah, it's just with, I'm not sure what Board Member Trujillo is up to, and it doesn't really matter, but my concern is that I know that we have one board member that serves in the House and another board member that's running for mayor. My concern is that, for people missing board meetings, just in general. And I know that when there are unexcused absences, because I didn't know Linda was not going to be here, but...
Linda's absence is excused, and I'll talk to you about that offline.
Oh, okay. Great.
Board Member Cashman?
I have two announcements. One, I'd like to thank the superintendent, her staff, and our partners for the excellent back-to-school bash. I think it was well received, and I know there was a lot of hard work put in to make it a success, so thank you. The other announcement I have, and I'll also make it again on Tuesday night, is Santa Fe Community College is having a college night on October 4th from 6 to 8 in their fitness center. And this is a great opportunity for not only our seniors in high school, but all of our kids from, let's say, middle school and up, to go over, take a look at various colleges and start getting into the swing of things. In the past, I know they've had some of the colleges have brought financial aid people, and they're not just New Mexico colleges. So I would encourage people to attend that. It's from 6 to 8 p.m. on October 4th in the fitness center. And I'll make another announcement on Tuesday, but just try to encourage our folks to go take a look at what's available out there, what's available for scholarships, and for our high school seniors, they should be thinking about applying for the Daniel Scholarship, which will be coming soon, and starting to think about the Lannell Scholarship. So just, there is money out there, but you can't get it if you don't apply. Thank you.
And I just want to thank the superintendent and everyone who helped put on the Region 2 wonderful reception that we hosted for the New Mexico School Board Association. Everyone who worked so hard, and once again, I want to reiterate the back-to-school bash was wonderful. I'm sorry you had both of those within 4 days of each other, but I appreciate the hard work that everyone put in, and you made us look good. Board Member Carrillo.
Echo what they say. I mean, it's a great event, and that'll be a legacy thing that you all started. The what?
Well, the bash or the school
bash.
boards? Oh.
Yes.
The bash. That's really a fun thing. Everyone comes out, and a friend of mine even commented how many just community members he thought were there that didn't even have kids in the public schools. Homecoming weekend, everybody. So go to Capitol High School this Friday night. It'll be really fun. And I know we don't have a meeting before then, but I just want to mention that because they're playing Lovington. They had the most amazing upset game last Friday. I mean, incredible upset game. And the game should be fun, but it's also, if you've not been to a homecoming, it's, you know, the whole parade of the royalty and it's really something. It's really fun. So Capital, Santa Fe's got an away game, but Capital's home, so there you have it.
Any other board announcements? Mr. Gremlin? Yeah, public forum.
Public forum. Did we have anybody that signed up, right? No.
No? Okay. So that moves us on to the Finance Subcommittee.
Thank you, Madam President. This evening, we have a financial and budget update, as well as a look ahead to 2018, 2019. So I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Carl Grenler. He'll be assisted by his Finance Director, Richard Helford.
Madam President, members of the Board, Superintendent, thank you. And as we were discussing, this is a short update. We'll just touch on a number of issues which are in the discussion topics and then be open for questions. There we go. Okay, so we'll look at the progress of the audit, which Richard will go through. Some information on charter schools we thought would be helpful for you to be aware of. Just a reminder on SB 9 timing, yes, that is coming up. And some budget strategies we're into right now in preparation for next year. And then a look ahead based on the information we have, and we thought that it would be helpful to set the stage based on the information, which seems actually to be realistic as we move forward. And it will likely just be, it will fill in with details, but I think that the information will likely remain pretty solid, and then we'll be open for questions. So Richard, the audit progress.
Okay, good evening, everyone. As you may know, we are in the thick of the audit process. We're about 2 months in. We have another month or so to go. We are on schedule. We asked them that to verify that at our last audit committee meeting, and they did assure us that we will have it on time, probably earlier than it has been in years past. So we're on schedule for that, even ahead of schedule, I would say. Carl was able to, the one issue that they had was that they weren't able to get the financial template from the previous auditors, and they had asked for our assistance in doing so, and so Carl put in a call to them, and after, must have convinced them, because we weren't sure if we were going to get them, and then all of a sudden, wham, we got an email with all the major reports and templates that they were asking for, and that's going to save, what, 40 hours, they said? So that's going to help get it on time as well. The like I said, we did ask for a revised schedule, and they did say that they could have us the findings by October 19th, which should give us ample time to discuss, challenge, revise anything that they come up with. They haven't had any yet, so I suppose that's a good sign. But we will be looking for those, and we'll address them as they come up. And finally, we do have the audit exit conference scheduled for November 2nd, and hopefully by then we'll have everything ready to go. They'll have it to the state auditor in time to meet the November 15th deadline, and give it some leeway in case the state auditor has any questions with the submission.
Thanks, Richard. Just a couple additional comments on the audit. Sometimes we get asked questions on why do we have the auditors do the financial reports, and the auditors are allowed to do the financial reports by the state auditor as long as the district has demonstrated its ability to compile the reports and put it together ourselves. And you know, we clearly could do that. Or this document, have you seen our audit? It is very, very large, and there's you know, a significant amount of experience that can be laid on top of it, along with the templates and putting it together, which is far more efficient. So that's what we've chosen to do. And we have high expectations this auditor will be able to, prepare, a clean, set of statements very, very rapidly, especially with this running start from, our 3 years with Moss Adams. The other thing is that we set the audit exit conference for November 2nd. The exit conference in the past several years has not been a good exit conference. It hasn't been a complete exit conference. The exit conference should be it. It should be the audit committee and the board members that are on the audit committee and the superintendent and our team, we should see it's final. It's ready to go. This is it. And that has not been the case, which has really confounded the effort and also jeopardized our ability to be able to file on time. So we're really looking forward to receiving the draft on October 19th and be reviewing that, have a sane amount of time to be able to complete our management discussion and analysis, which is a part of the audit, and then at this exit conference, basically be ready, this is what we're hopeful of, is to be ready to say, we're complete, we've discussed everything, and we're ready to file.
The obvious question is what's happened in the
Board
past?
Member Carrillo?
Thank you. The obvious question is what's happened in the past that's made it incomplete? I would imagine it's not on our end, because I know, but I'm just curious as to what's happened.
Well, it always takes two to tango, President Price and Member Carrillo. But the amount of questions that the auditor has waited to the end to ask, the amount of reviews, which we're not even sure where in the country the reviews were taking place, that also layered in additional questions, made it very, very difficult for our team and ATC's team to be able to get to a point where the audit was ready to file. To the point where we were working right up until the last hours, almost 24 hours a day, the last several days in order to complete, which we felt was very unnecessary.
Well, is there some template or something that either we can ask for, that the state asks for, so that they can't just throw in a whole bunch of stuff at the last minute? Because that just seems not only unfair, but very unprofessional.
President Price, Member Carrillo, this is the reason why the audit committee and then collectively we decided to go out for RFP again for the audit and to select our new auditor, and this was one of the criteria on their ability to be able to deliver an audit and meet their work plan.
And this is the firm, the Jaramillo firm, right?
Correct.
Audit Jaramillo? Okay.
Secretary Noble?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say, with a few audit committee meetings under my belt now, that I'm very impressed with this committee. I believe there's a vacancy that Board Member Trujillo, in terms of her representative, so that all of us do have representatives that are there, and it's a good committee. These gentlemen do an extraordinary job. I know, when audits are going smoothly, it can seem boring, but it's incredibly important. But I'm really impressed with the details of the questions that are asked by the committee members. They're looking at the check register and asking good questions around the check register. And, I've just been very, very impressed with the committee. And I think we're very lucky to have the representatives that we do serving on that committee.
All right. Moving on. This section is on charter schools, and there's three categories of note we wanted to bring before you. One is that each year now, we are responsible for distributing the allocations for the educational technology note to the charter schools. And of course, that's based on 40th day, and it's all 40th day student counts and the percentages that result, and then also a deduction then of an equitable percentage of the costs. So we have to close the educational technology note, we have to receive those costs, which are our rating, our bond advisor, our bond counsel, and then we distribute, and so that has been completed. We've received most of the SB 9 participation request letters from the charter schools. There's just a couple we haven't heard from. We certainly expect to. And then we've had to spend some time with ATC on their year-end cash report. There was a number of things that were incorrect on the report that PED had concerns on and notified us, and that we got involved with, and we've been able to work through them to a positive resolution. There's a lot of ins and outs that needed to be corrected in the report, and the items of note we've added here. They ended up with $11,000 in cash. So this is a very, very low cash balance for ATC. They started the year, of course, with higher. So did we. So the reasons were the same, that their cash balance went down. So the real concern was that all of the funds were in balance. There's still one that PED actually did not provide a couple years ago, some of the pay-for-performance funds that were actually expended. So we're still working through that issue with PED to help ATC out. So that fund balance is still open, but the rest are in good order. And their projected cash balance at the end of June 2018 is expected to be over 100,000. So they're basically, they have some growth units with some additional students, and they've kept their expenditures in check, and their revenues are going up some. So they're heading in the right direction on building cash balance. So that's really the report to the board we wanted to make, and that quarterly reviews are planned just to provide additional support for them. So there's an educational process involved from reviewing all the PED reports and reviewing their updates on a quarterly basis to budget.
Board Member Creo and then Vice President Cashman.
So on the SB 9 participation letters, that's where, right, people want to, they have to ask us in advance that they want to participate. Is NMSA, are they eligible for any of this, and do they ask?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, has there been anything lately from NMSA, any requests made relative to helping them build out their facility?
Board President Price, if I may, Board Member Carrillo, no, not to this, at this point.
Okay, just curious. And then, in terms of pay for performance, is that happening again this year?
No, it is not. We were not selected. We came in like fourth, or we were just supposedly the very next one, and we missed it by a few points. And I thought it was sort of odd because we were asked to apply again. They wanted us in it because of the longitudinal data that could be provided, and we were not selected. They selected some new schools.
Well, one could extract quite a bit from that. All right. Híjole. Okay, thanks.
On the, before you go on opposite, that's okay. On the ATC, did they have a change in their financial management? So is that why they ran into some problems with PED?
President Price, Vice President Cashman, yes. That was certainly part of it. And we use this as certainly as a way to pull the school into discussions over these reports and how critical these are and how critical they are to track. So I think that the principal and the assistant principal, who are both very good, we treat it as an educational opportunity. So understanding the interrelationships with the funds is not necessarily something that charter schools know. It's something we live with all the time on the optimization of over 50 different funds. So we helped them through that process, and we're able to move some things around to be able to support a positive cash balance this year. And I think that there was a good bit of learning that took place. So moving on to SB 9 timing, just as a reminder for us that this is coming. There's really three key things we thought would be important to mention now. Is that the request letters are being received by the charter school, and we expect to receive the remaining a couple of them this fall. And then, as you may recall, in November, we're required to submit the official notification, the legal notification to the county of the election, and it has all of the the information in there which informs electorate on what the reasons for the request are, and then the participants. And that will take place in November, so we can expect an action item which we're very familiar with then. And then in February of 2018, I forget the exact date, we'll have the SB 9 election, and again, it's a 6-year election, and it's $2 million.
I did want to say on this point, we had some preliminary meetings, a meeting with, I did, with Christy and Jeff, because we need to be mapping out, backward planning, how we communicate around this. I think it's very important that the public be aware of what we provided, what that means for them. And I was not aware, actually, till just very recently, that we were going to have another election. And it's just, I guess, the way they fall, that we almost have one every year. I wasn't aware of that, which I'm surprised we don't get some voter fatigue. So I am concerned, you know, just because of the recent elections that have not gone well around taxes. And so I think our communication key is going to be key for us, is how we communicate with the public. So we're very much on that.
Board Member Carrillo?
I'm sure there's voter fatigue. Look at the county turnout, right? So are we considering it all based on our increased costs, the increases, the additional sharing with charters? Are we considering it all going for more than the $2 million?
President Price, Member Carrillo, that's not a consideration at this point in time, specifically after, you know, the GO bond increase. And the superintendent is correct. I mean, these elections just keep coming. So, you know, it's every 6 years for SB 9 and every 6 years for HB 33, and they're separated by 3 years in their election. Then our GO bond is every 4 years. So clearly, yeah, and ETN is every year. Well, no, every 3 years, pretty much right now.
Just curious.
But it almost just falls out. You know, I mean, I would not recommend it.
All right. I just didn't know if there was a dire need or if it had been talked around the water cooler or whatever. Just curious.
Well,
Okay.
the other point, I guess, is that the county evaluations are creeping up, you know, a percentage to a year. So that's helpful in comparison to a reduction. So there is some recovery which is expected over time, clearly over the next 6 years of an SB 9 election for some of those revenues as well.
Vice President Cashman?
And I wouldn't recommend we increase the mill levy just from the last vote for the county increase. At least anecdotally, while I was standing in line, there was a lot of frustration, and some of that was, you know, with the schools too. People were, you know, I hate all these special elections. You know, the school is trying to slip through something. So there was, you know, some animosity about that. It was a small line, but they were.
All right, so moving on to the budget strategy section. Again, this is touch and go, just to let you know what is, let's see if we got one more there. The ADM and vacancy savings, we have some full-time subs in the district, but we do almost every year. And so I just wanted to let you know that the ADM and the vacancy savings are part of what we project when we put together and balance the budget and send it off to PED. So we're on track, maybe a little ahead of schedule, but it's hard to know what those vacancy savings will look like during the year. And then that leads into the operational cash balance. You know, there's a better than even chance for us to move into the 5 to 7.5% by the end of this fiscal year, which, you know, certainly will be welcome, that we're able to do that and still maintain the support for all of our programs. What's taking place this next month or so, and it's still in blue, meaning it's this year, Title I classroom size reduction. This is a strategy that we use when we have, it's a Title I authorized program to use Title I money for some of our teachers in our classrooms when we have small classrooms. And we've been using this for some time to be able to leverage Title I and still maintain our investment in our classrooms in the operational budget. And then that also feeds into our training and experience report, which is coming up for filing the first week in November, where we can move some of our newer teachers in this Title I class size reduction into Title I. So there's a benefit. So the cost in Title I is offset by the increased index in our training and experience report and money that we get in our SEG. It's a strategy that's available to us, and we use it. A couple other things that we'll be looking at, because the year will move by very fast, and then we'll be into a timing that we won't have the opportunity to assess this in the same way, is looking at, what has taken place this year, what our, actual, student counts are, as we go through the 40th day process and finalize that, and what that might mean to us as far as reviewing, where students are and where they, what strategies we may need to embrace for next year. A real good example is Amy Beal. So we're going to be looking at that very carefully and assessing that. And then there might be some other opportunities that we need to evaluate where we're a little over, and what would we do there? There's one at Atalaya that we need to evaluate, those types of things. But now is the time where we need to make those assessments to plan forward.
On that point, just clarify so that perhaps Ms. Noble or people in the audience may not know, the updating the PTR, pupil-teacher ratio, and facility utilization. So, there's mandates and there's minimums, but we are evaluating that piece of it.
And then our academic colleagues are always in the process of looking at opportunities to, based on how we scheduled this year and what that meant to us, and is there an opportunity to do something a little bit more creative or something better for students in the next year. And if we don't look at that now, then when we get to January and February, when we're evaluating master schedules again, particularly for our secondary schools, it's almost too late. All right, so looking ahead to 2018-19, when we look at the dynamics of our state equalization guarantee, we're able to see some things which are definitely going to happen, or trends that have been taking place. And one of them is that our student enrollment has been ticking down, and this has been happening, I think this is into the 4th year now, where that has been the case, whereas a couple previous years we actually were having growth units. And this is largely due to the fact that our kindergarten classes are smaller. And so those are matriculating through the process now, and each year we're seeing a slight tick down in our enrollment. So we know that's happening, and we also know that, in fact, I was driving by it this morning when I was coming back from the chamber meeting, Vargas Middle School is just no longer there. So clearly the year of grace for the small school size adjustment for DeVargas will be gone, and that $250,000 will not be there. There is actually, some other small school size adjustments that we'll have to carefully manage, or they could be impacted as well. So those are the losses in program units, and then we basically assumed that other impacts on the state equalization guarantee, at least for this early look, are in net going to stay the same. And then we know that our fixed operating costs will continue to rise slightly, whether they be the risk premiums, the health insurance premiums, rates for utilities and so forth. So in looking at that, what might we be able to assess? And this is what it looks like from a very early look. The decline in student enrollment, obviously going to be verified with 40th day and then 80th, 120th day next year. But it looks like that could be approximately $750,000. And then the loss in the small school size adjustment, another $250,000. So approximately $1 million in loss in SEG, all other things being equal, including a constant unit value, it is likely what we would see. So then the question comes, well, what do we think is going to happen with unit value? And from what we're reading, is it possible that we would get a little over 1% of increase in unit value, about $40 a piece, which would cover these loss in program units? Yes.
Possible.
Yeah, it's possible. Obviously nobody's committed to that, but it is possible. So that's all we're saying here, is that we know we're going to lose some program units, which would result in the loss of SEG on a program unit level, but we don't know what will happen with unit value. We expect it, that the likelihood of it going up is far greater than it going down. We would expect it to be either static or go up some. So what does this tell us? Well, that's the next slide. So when we look at this, it looks like state revenue forecasts suggest the ability and a commitment to support a flat or slightly increased unit value next year. So obviously we'll watch that, but that's encouraging. And that our fixed costs are likely to increase, our fixed operating costs are likely to increase modestly. And we wanted to make a note here that we're, the superintendent and I are both hearing some, I would call them tremors, because there are initial discussions that CES is bringing forward some of these thoughts, and also our competitive benefits associates, our ancillary benefit provider for employees, that there are options out there that are developing in different parts of the country that are wellness-centric and are less expensive and seem to be far better alternatives for employees in those districts which have chosen them. So we're going to be taking a look at that. There's a district in the state that has actually taken several steps, including visiting some of these clinics and these different offerings for health insurance. And so over time, we'll look at this, because what is happening is NPSIA is continually bringing us stories of high costs, the need for increased premiums, and the need for reduced benefits. So many of us, at least in financial circles, are talking about this. If this continues, all we're going to end up with is catastrophic insurance. So there's got to be some look at how to kind of recreate how we develop and deliver healthcare services to our employees. And so that's what this is about. So we'll take a look, we'll see what we find, and this is just, hopefully the first of many discussions on this issue.
Vice President Cashman?
So when you say we're going to take a look at it, we, the state, or we, Santa Fe Public Schools, who is the we that's going to take a look at it?
There's a number of interested districts in the state. So what we're proposing is that, and we haven't done this yet, but is to kind of join forces in investigation so we don't duplicate effort.
It's not that we're anywhere close to
Nowhere close.
making that kind of a shift. I don't even know what's possible. I would say this is very, very preliminary, and I think, it has to do with strength in numbers. APS can be self-insured because of the number. I think in one of the notes I read, do people want to join with APS? I don't even know if they even would want to join with anybody. They may or they may not. But you have to have a certain critical mass to be able to do that in some sort of collective. On the other hand, I don't know, this is just so preliminary that I wouldn't be too, it's not like imminent.
No, debated even bringing it forward, but if we don't pay attention to some of these things that are happening in the country and evaluate them on their opportunity for us, then we would feel remiss.
And it could be that this is sort of these discussions that you wind up positioned and it develops a critical mass that maybe we'd bring a recommendation to you 2 to 3 years from now. But I think it's prudent to just let you know that that discussion is happening. So if you do hear about it, it's not that we're ready to join forces, but that we're just exploring.
Board Member Carrillo?
I'll get to, excuse me, I'll get to that one in a second. I wrote down here, I'm sorry to bring it up at the time, operational cash balance, and, there's a chance we might sell property, there's different things happening. What can we do to protect our money from the state?
Isn't there a way of putting it like in the state treasurers or at with the investment council? I think there are some other alternatives than to having it just readily just sitting there, but I don't know if it still shows up as a credit, right?
Board Member Carrillo, Superintendent Garcia, it's still considered cash at the state level. It's whether it's in investments or in cash. They figure it's liquid enough. We could get it.
They'll take it. If they want it, they'll take it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've heard, delaying some payments, but really the way that the auditors work, that's another suggestion that we've heard in the past, that they would just
I
post
understand.
it to
That's
our
fine.
period, so.
Okay, the other little note I had was full-time subs. Are we, I imagine that we're slowly filling those positions.
As we were able to find people, I think it's right around, it's a very small amount. It's about 12 out of,
Right.
900? But they're in these very difficult to fill positions.
I understand. It's usually STEM,
But
special ed.
we're
yeah.
working on it.
Right.
And we just found another source that I just referred to Julie not too long ago for hiring employees.
Then my note here on the unit value is like, even if it were to go up, an itty bitty, it probably wouldn't cover any increase in healthcare. We'd end up taking probably another hit because for years and years, we've, absorbed that on behalf of our employees. And then my note here is, and this is where I think that people need to start being bold, and that we as a district, when it comes time for the legislative breakfast, put forward the New Mexicare plan that I proposed in July, and that single payer for New Mexico. And because that would make not only New Mexico competitive in attracting teachers, it would make us, it would give us an advantage in retaining teachers. It would also put more money back in our operational budget for all the increases that we end up having to absorb and everything else. But I think maybe in some ways we need to think bigger. And I can't remember who said it, that districts, maybe joining with Albuquerque or whatever, but essentially, it was really funny the other day on CNN. It was Deanna Basho. One of them, no, it wasn't her, because she's really cornered Rand Paul. And it was really wonderful to see, because he had been had. Because he was talking about how the larger buying pools, giving it to the state so there can be a big buying pool here and there, benefits everybody. And she says, well, doesn't it then follow and stand to reason that the United States would be the biggest buying pool of all? Doesn't it stand to reason that single payer then would be the best way? It was just, and then he had to fudge his way out of it, but it was just really cornered him, and it was great. And so, but my thinking is for us to maybe start thinking about how districts are affected by healthcare costs. And, and I've said this a number of times, and I don't know to what extent Linda has listened, and I know the New Mexico School Board as a whole just kind of writes me off, but we could run the table. I love that phrase. New Mexico school boards could run the table because we are 600 people representing 300,000 school kids and their families and guardians. So if we really decided that, that all of these kids wanted, single payer for their families, this is a poor state, we'd have it. It's very simple. We'd have it. Do we want to run the table or not?
Madam President.
Dr. Garcia?
On that point, I would suggest that perhaps Board Member Carrillo might want to talk to you or another board member if this is something that the board wants to pursue to get it on for an action item. And the reason I say that, the legislative breakfast is too late. And so if in fact this is something that has traction and interest to the board, and then that is given as a directive, then I would work with Mr. Carrillo to talk to the leadership and to other key committee members. We need to start that, now in October, because of legislative breakfast will be too late.
I'm happy to just,
Well, just do just take it, I think we should put it on as an action item. I could put it on for next time. You could vote it up or down, but then we could move forward with it to start trying to work that, because if this is of interest to the board and what that means, we have to start soon.
would you guys be okay with putting it as an action and then seeing if it'll fly? Maureen, you're not nodding at all.
Well, I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're trying to do. So, as we know, healthcare is very complicated, so I'm not sure, what are you asking to do?
I'm asking us then to explore, for me to work with Dr. Garcia and our delegation or whoever she decides is the right person, to consider pushing for a single-payer health plan for the state of New Mexico. Because given our demographic, given, both socio and economic, given the poor state of child wellness in our state, I mean, it really does stand to reason that if you can do something, you said in your statement the other day, the greatest good for the greatest number, right? I mean, what else could there be, the greatest good for the greatest number, than making sure that everyone that's in New Mexico has health insurance and can go to the doctor? And, yes, that's a statewide issue, but it's also an issue for public schools and public education, because the less we also have to spend on healthcare and wraparound services, that's more money in the classroom.
And my point was only not to take a vote here, was just if, in fact, what I'm saying to, I guess, to Board Member Carrillo is to get, someone else to put it on the agenda so that you guys can vote it up or down soon, so that if this is something that is the pleasure of the board, we can start on
I
it
see.
sooner.
Then I would ask President Price, would you please put that on the agenda for our next meeting? Thank you. Did I answer your question, Maureen?
Yes, so you're not just talking about the schools, you're talking about every person in New Mexico that does not receive health care through their employer, is that what,
They would no longer have to receive health care through their employer. This would be, in a sense,
So
what
like
Bernie's
Vermont,
asking for
like
nationally.
Vermont,
And,
that
we
does.
almost had this.
Okay.
Do you remember? It was Lieutenant Governor Bradley that cast the deciding no vote. We almost had this like 20 years ago. We were this close to being a leader in the nation, to having a single payer for New Mexico. Exciting.
All right, so this is the last slide on the look ahead. And there certainly remains pressure in reducing federal grant budgets. We had a 14% drop this year in Title I, about the same in Title II in 21st Century. And we were put on notice from the Department of Education that there was a risk of losing Title II in 21st Century in the 18-19 budget. That looks not to be the case now. So that's very encouraging, although we don't know what the reductions might be into 18-19. So that's just an item to watch, because those programs are critical for the operation of the school district. And so the last bullet in italics is our effort to kind of capture where we are, just to put ourselves into a framework of what 18-19 is most likely going to look like. The net of what we know now at this early juncture suggests that we may need to reduce operational expenditures again next year to deliver a balanced budget if the unit value remains flat. But it is possible for us to receive an increase in SEG driven by an increase in unit value that would be sufficient to cover our reductions in program units and increases in fixed operational expenses. So the context of this is very, very different than the year we are in now, that we were entering last year at this time in the budget process. And I guess that's the message that we just wanted to share.
But on that point, though, this is with all factors staying equal with what he said right there. Because there is, I think, we're going to try to do our best to advocate for more money, because we need to look at compensation. But there is an issue, and I have brought this up, when we've had discussions with NEA, that our class sizes, now some of it were locked in because of just the size of the building. But with that said, we have a lower PTR than the state average, and that's a good thing. But if we want to do something in compensation, there might be some give and take that you would have to do to make that happen, if there's no additional money. Because there's no other place really that I can see anymore where you can, get blood out of the turnip.
Board Member Carrillo.
So given that the turnip's not going to yield any more blood, we need more turnips. And I'm curious if maybe at the next Finance Committee meeting, there could be some kind of a dollar figure of what, all things being equal, right? We expect healthcare to go up. So if we absorb that cost, because we can't cut, there's no way to cut operations anymore, assuming that that's the case. So what would we need? I think it was like 250,000 last time, or 300. So then what would we need to give a 2.5 to 3% raise? That's like every percentage is like $800,000, right? Okay, so that's 2.4 million. So then, I mean, just so we have an idea of our ask, and, and if other districts could do the same, if you meet with other superintendents, just so we know what our ask is, so then at least with our delegation, we can go in guns blazing, this is what we need, even barely to catch up with inflation or whatever.
And really that ties into, the board questions. It is clear because you've been restating this all along. But the superintendent's point is really the last bullet there, that without some kind of realignment of resources internally, it doesn't leave us in a very good position to be able to have flexibility in reaching for evolving board priorities, but particularly for compensation, which is the foremost on all of our minds. So that's just a reality that if we really understand that now, there may be some things that evolve, over the next several months that would give us an opportunity to maybe change, that statement.
So that concludes our report. So we're ready to stand for any additional questions you may have.
Vice President Cashman?
I guess just a comment for board members. If we know, because we're already thinking about next year's budget. So if there's something that that's important to you that has a budgetary impact, it would be good to be bringing those things up now so we have a discussion rather than waiting until our staff starts to develop a budget. So if there's, like for me, it's always to try to find a way, if we can't compensate our staff more, which is always my first priority, then we need to absorb the health care. But if there are other things that we know that we, as a board, want to ask in the budget, we need to be asking sort of within the next month or so the staff can look and say, well, wait a minute, because we're not going to see any big pot of money coming to us. Okay.
Secretary Noble?
Thank you. Has there been any progress in looking at revenue enhancements? Is that bearing any fruit at all?
Well, we have, but not to a broad extent that you can count on for recurring expenditures. I think these will all be for just enhancements, and we have actually raised quite a bit of money that helped us do our Leadership Institute, helped us with the first day back, has helped us for various small little projects for my Leadership Institute. But I think as we continue, we are waiting. Our new activities and athletic director will come on October 2nd. Once he comes on board, we'll start to work that plan about the first order of business is how fundraising happens on our campuses, but also how do we monetize or what guidelines do we have around monetizing. You have a board policy right now on some of that, but from scoreboards to hanging signs on our fields or naming rights for whatever. So, we are looking at that. I think that we have some community partners that would be interested in naming rights, but I'm not ready to bring a proposal to the board that we would put out to RFP. So, yes, but it's not fully fledged, the flesh is not on the bones yet to the level that it would need to be for me to bring to you.
President Price, members of the board, where that could be just a tremendous benefit to the district is that in the athletic department budget, we're not fully costing athletics. So there's a significant amount of costs that we're currently incurring in the operational budget for security and utilities and custodial and a number of other things that we're absorbing because we can't absorb them in the activity fund for the athletic department. So if that activity fund, received, we're calling it monetizing the district, if we were able to monetize some of the assets that we have in athletics into that athletic activities fund, then that fund could begin to cover all these costs in the operational budget that they're not covering now and free up those resources in the operational budget. So indirectly, monetizing our athletic assets can provide additional resources for instruction.
And what we have to do is find the right balance, because obviously, I mean, you can be thinking where, if I were a principal at Capitol High or Santa Fe High, I'd be thinking, well, you're gonna sell gonna allow so-and-so to have the scoreboard. Well, we should be able to have, that money for our teams, and it's like, yes, but there's also gotta be some offset here, because we all win if we collaborate. And that's where I think a board policy, will want to modify what you currently have. But again, it's not well thought out yet. We're still working on it.
Board Member Carrillo?
And as much as they might want everything for their teams, and I would probably want that too if I was there, it's our property. Let's make no mistake about it. And I also, I imagine the board would want, whether in policy, to come up with an idea of, there are certain sponsorships that maybe aren't appropriate for high school kids. But anyway, and then also, special thanks to New Senda for the bash, and also for the teacher thing they did, or the teacher thing they did that Friday before school opened. Because they have, and thanks to your efforts, Dr. Garcia, they have really stepped up as kind of a major supporter of Santa Fe Public Schools, so. A few more New Sendas and, we're in better shape.
And at the next board meeting, we'll be honoring our sponsors for the bash and also for the Region 2 board meeting.
Yes. Okay, let's move on to board discussion and possible action. Secretary Noble.
Thank you, President Price. On this resolution and in working on it with the superintendent, I realize how much of it is covered by the work we'll be doing in the strategic plan and the facilities master plan updates, and as that moves. So at this time, I am withdrawing this resolution, as none of you have seen a draft either, and it will look at bringing it back if after we complete the strategic plan, there's additional work needed.
Vice President Cashman, you wanted to make a comment?
I was actually going to make comment on C, which doesn't exist
Oh,
there
I was
yet.
gonna say.
But C doesn't exist, but I do want to.
And I'm going to have a rebuttal on C.
But I do want to make comment on C, which does
Okay.
involve multiple resolutions. Okay.
And Board Member Carrillo.
I'm making a comment on F, expecting that you'll do a D and a no. So on A, I just want to make sure that, Maureen, that you're satisfied, because my understanding was that this resolution was going to cover a lot of what your concerns were, where we didn't take action, like a month ago or so. I just want to make sure that your concerns are met, or maybe it's something you can do with, the super offline or whatever, but I just, I'm concerned about that.
Well, there's, I am concerned, and Mr. Grunler brought up Amy Beal. I'm concerned. There is, our schools are not aligned correctly. So I was hoping to see what this resolution was, but I am very concerned that we still have too much capacity, seats in the wrong places, and this all affects our budget. So no, my concerns have not been answered, but also in June, the board voted that down. So, I don't think there's anyone in the public that doesn't know where I stand when I still have people talk to me out in the public. I tell them why I thought a vote was needed to consolidate or close schools. When I explain to them one-on-one, they say, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We didn't get it. But, if there's no will in the board, but, to do that, which I don't think there is, then we still have to grapple with the issue of some schools have too many kids there, some don't. That's not equitable. And as we spread our resources further and further out very thinly, it affects, it's not equitable. And so, no, my concerns are not answered. I know that I will be talking with the superintendent, and we have talked about Amy Beal, because that's one of the schools I represent. But something's going to have to happen, and we don't know what, but, you know, we still have, I think as a board, we still have a lot of issues that we choose to not grapple with, and I can understand that, you know, everyone has different opinions, but no, I'm not
Okay.
satisfied.
So I agree with you. I don't agree with the very last sentence you said, that there's things that the board wants to grapple with and doesn't. I think we're good grapplers. But I would, if this resolution, you know, it's obviously not brought forward, the thing that Maureen brought forward was voted down. I just want to make sure we're moving forward very vigorously with ARC and with, you know, Chrissy's team around, you know, all the schools on the south side, Amy Beal, Pignon, and Turquoise Trail. And doesn't have to happen in the next 2 weeks. I know you're really busy, but just because that's going to be here before we know it.
Thank you, board members. All of you have brought up an issue here that, you know, we're struggling. Why is there so much echo?
Yeah.
We're struggling with as a cabinet, but there's work that happens regardless. And I think that the CRC will be dealing with some of these issues. We'll be, you know, looking at the facilities master plan. One of the things that I would like to offer Ms. Noble, Secretary Noble, because she hasn't been on the CRC, is to really sit with her and go over the facilities master plan, how it is developed, what is the rationale behind it. And as we look at the facilities master plan in a conjunction with the budget, you know, I think some things are just going to happen organically. You know, I think last year we were under the gun because we thought the budget was going to be what it was, and there was a very compressed timeline. This is not code, anybody out there, for closing schools. You know, that is not what we're saying. But we do have to look at some realities and timelines. And you know, we would be derelict if we don't bring this stuff up of, you know, here are options of how we could look at these things. And so I know that our chief operations officer is concerned about it. I know my CFO's concerned about it. I'm concerned about it. And so, you know, we just have to, we're not under the gun like we were last year. And so I think that, you know, we can look at that. And I also believe that as we look at the strategic plan, depending on what we do around alternative education, Ms. Noble just joined us yesterday. We went on an innovation tour of some amazing things that are happening in Albuquerque that I think we can strengthen ECO, but what we do with our career clusters and how we move forward on our career academies, rather. I think there's some interesting things happening. I'm really excited about our strategic planning process. So that's what I said to Ms. Noble. I think the strategic planning process, along with what the CRC normally does, what happens with the facilities master plan, may just organically address these issues anyway. So that's where we're at. It's not a study per se that we're looking to do something specifically, which is where I thought we might have been going, but I think we've rethought it.
Vice President Cashman?
I would hope when we're looking at some of those things, and that we are also going to be looking at interzone transfers. That's key to me. When I see the population on the south side, and I see how much building is happening out there right now, you know, we may have to, you know, move interzone transfers from being decided. I mean, this is just, I'm not saying, you know, the superintendent will know best, but instead of allowing principals to approve those interzone transfers, they may have to be approved at a higher level because the principal is looking out for their school instead of looking at the district. And, you know, having people move into schools or grant interzone transfers, and then the family expects the rest of their siblings to be able to go to those schools, is starting to create some problems. And so, to me, you know, that is very important to take a look at interzone and how, I'm not saying we should deny them, but it may be that you have to elevate them. And I'm also concerned about Milagro. You know, will we see once the new school is built, will we see students that are zoned for Milagro that have chosen to go other places return? And then if we have granted interzones, then we don't have enough room. So I think that needs to be in the mix. And the only other thing I'm concerned about is the strategic plan is not going to be resolved. I mean, it's a long process. And so by the time we get to it, we're going to probably be already into the next school year. And I think there are some decisions that probably have to happen sooner. I mean, that's just my opinion.
Secretary Noble?
Thank you. And I'm glad you brought up interzone transfers. And my hope is, I believe our strategic plan schedule is to complete it in January or February.
To have the goal areas, the initiatives we can, the staff will work on, but yeah, I think we set the end of February at the latest, and you're correct.
And, my hope is, and I know that this is, and this is part of the reason I wanted to pull this back, partly because given the staff workload, it's pushing very hard for what I really hoped, which is that we can have a better understanding of really some of the human needs, and I am going to work to understand the facilities master plan better. I've read it, but El Camino Real is a school that's bursting at the seams, and I see the urgency there. But I hope that we can look at our competitive position, not just things like, well, let's assume, maybe we should assume a 1% decline, but I also hope we can attract students back from charters, and that we can work on, I think as every organization should, being more competitive. And El Camino is going to be hugely affected by this development in the county that we've talked about, and I think that's very, very serious, but I've had conversations with at least one county commissioner who is very energized around working with the school districts, and my hope is that we can really push ourselves in a strategic plan to be creative, to think about the competitive positioning, to think about interzone transfers and other movements in the system that need to be adjusted. And my concern is that it not be a straight up calculation of kids and seats, that we're looking at a lot more of the factors that make the system fairly complex, including the intergovernmental partnerships that we could have with something like the county or even the city. And I hope that as we think about, and on this innovation tour that we were on yesterday, they've designed schools around what the industries want. And the one we were at was healthcare, and really preparing students for jobs in the healthcare industry. And they are really reverse engineering their curricula based on what the healthcare industry is telling them they need in the skills. And it was very inspiring to see an incredibly creative and community-driven approach. And I know it's going to be challenging, but I really hope that through the strategic plan process, we can engage a broader constituency and really push ourselves to think about the future of schools and how an integrated community might approach planning for schools.
Board Secretary Noble, that was one sentence. That was wonderful. That was wonderful. Board Member Carrillo.
So, Maureen, I'm not sure, well, correct me if I'm wrong, principals don't really have anything to do with transfers. We know how many seats are there. Of course, they have something to do with transfers, but if a school's got 260 seats, a bunch of vacancies coming up in the 4th and 5th grade, the principal doesn't get to close it off. We're going to fill those seats if there's people that are applying for those seats. And then that's my understanding. And we've modified this system so much over the last 4 years, and 5 years under the previous super, because there were so many people cheating. And then there were So obviously we started a lot more home visits, and then just a great deal of fidelity to the lottery, to make sure that those places that were overcrowded, we slowly decreased their populations, and then kind of held firm on that. My concern on the other side of town is, I wonder, when you look at a school like El Camino with 830 kids, which is not what we ever planned over there. We planned like 750 tops, and that was for all grades and everything else. Why would there ever be transfers into an El Camino when it's already so overcrowded? We have to afford them the same respect and opportunities that we did for Carlos Gilbert, Wood Gormley, at one point Atalaya, to say, no, we're not taking any, no matter how much somebody wants to go to a dual language school, no, we're not going to overcrowd the school for you. And so that's one way we can probably bring that population down. Same with Nina Otero. So, if you want to comment on transfer, because I don't believe the principals have nearly the, we'll say, power that I heard you say, Maureen. And then with regards to Milagro, it's really, I think the one thing we've done that is helping us at that level, we know that in grades 7 and 8, the people flee the public schools, and we know they come back at grade 9. And but the good thing is we've now built into the system, as I understand it, where if someone wants to come back in grade 9, they need to let us know. It was sometime in May, there was a date that if you're going to take your seat based on residency, you have to let us know.
Yes, but at the end of the day, if they show up, we have to take them.
No, I know we have to take them, but I know that we're being much more vigilant in going to those families. And even if it means a home visit with them and saying, look, are you coming or not? Because we have 30 people that want the seat, and if you're playing the private school roulette, you need to let us know what's going on, because this affects, lots of kids beside your own. And then, the county development piece. If they could just, from the moment of inception, let us know what they may or may not be planning in a given area, so then we can plan.
Okay, Board Member Carrillo, proposed PED science standards.
So this is, I do learn from everyone, and I do sometimes change my approach to things based on what I hear.
Brain elasticity.
Yes. So what's interesting here is I know that there are groups, primarily the Sierra Club and some others, that are planning some, big to-do on the 16th, the day of the hearing, right? And I'm hoping for everyone's sake they move that hearing to some place where more people can attend, and they may even change the time so it doesn't shut out pretty much all the working parents in the district, right? Mm-hmm. But that having been said, and I had asked for the board to kind of give a head nod of approval to possibly having done some sort of a rally, right? So what's interesting is my friend Stephen Hochberg at Temple Beth, we were talking about all this, and I got to tell you, at services on Friday and Saturday, because I guess Robert quoted me in the paper, the number of people that are up in arms about PED wanting to mess with science standards, and I'm not exaggerating when I say at least 50 people said, Steve, we agree with what you said, what on earth are they thinking? And so Steve Hochberg and I were talking, and he said, I don't know, he said protest, not being able to go, and different things, and he used the phrase teach-in, and I said, oh my God, a teach-in. I said, you nailed it. And I just it's like this big light bulb went off. So the reason I have this on here, and I wanted to let you know that I've spoken with the people at the Lannell Foundation, I've spoken with people at Global Warming Express, I've spoken with just a personal friend at Santa Fe Institute. I would like your approval, and I'm going to do, your support in my going ahead with a low impact, very low attended, just very simple statement at PED in having a teach-in. And the idea is to do this on October 13th, Friday, to do it from 3:30 until 5, because then people that work and go to school can actually come to invite 6 to 7 scientists that cover things like global, obviously global climate change sciences, evolutions. I would read a portion from Neil deGrasse Tyson's book, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. You're just having 6 or 7 people give a 10-minute science lesson based on fact. And I mean, the way I actually envision this is, maybe the thing that comes to mind, which is kind of hokey, but it's almost like, The Sound of Music, where everyone is sitting on, the side of a hill, and they're getting the lesson from Maria von Trapp or something. I mean, I really do see it like that, but it's making a very powerful statement that we have very prominent scientists from Lannel Foundation, Santa Fe, people coming and say, look, you're going to learn about real science today and about climate change. You're going to learn about the human effects in causing the changes to where we are now. So really, I say that it's a very soft approach, it's a very low impact approach, nothing that involves 1 penny or 1 minute of district time or resources. Of course, we would let people know that did attend or whatever, please go to PED on the 16th and have your voice heard at the hearing.
Comment that they take.
Or send in something, yeah.
Take written comment. I think that's really important, regardless if you're for them, against them. Get your written comment.
Written comments in, yeah. And I would just like the board to say, you know what, Steve, that's a really kind of wonderful, cheesy, fun way to get a point across by having prominent scientists comment and some kids from Global Warming Express, obviously, when I spoke to them, to have them say, we want to learn real science, so that when we go to a real university, they don't tell us that we can't come because we're from New Mexico. Because the UC schools, there are certain schools in the country that if they are Catholic schools or religiously dominated schools where their science curriculum does not teach evolution or climate change or these things, UC schools, and I was told this by someone at Lannel, so I assume I haven't done the research myself, they won't accept those science credits from those schools, because those kids were not exposed to real science. Anyway, so that's my concept. Credit to Steve Hochberg as well. He said, if you don't give me credit, and he said, if you don't mention, he's a really fun, wonderful guy. I mean, a great benefactor on so many causes in Santa Fe, he and his wife, Jane. So anyway, so there you have it. And it's just serendipitous that it happens to be Friday the 13th. But I would just love to have the blessing of the 3 of you to say, gee, Steve, that sounds like a really fun idea. I may even plan to be there. So there you have it. That's why I have this on the agenda.
Vice President Cashman?
I think that's a better proposal than what you proposed to us before. As long as, as I said before, that we are not promoting it or even reaching into NEA or because we cannot afford to be perceived as using state dollars to promote this. So I think I would agree with that. I just want to make a couple of other comments on the science portion of it. This is really a matter of public. A scientist did call me today. I wasn't home, but a colleague of my husband. Santa Fe Public Schools is not thinking of adopting these science standards. There was some confusion at Lannel and some of the retired scientists. This is something that the Public Education Department is proposing, not Santa Fe Public Schools, because they were pretty outraged with my husband on the phone. So we are not proposing a change to the next generation standards. We are asking that they be adopted as they're written. The other thing, and I echo what Dr. Garcia said, a couple of people have said, what can I do? The most powerful, and I was attending a different meeting last night about another community activist type of group. The most powerful thing you can do right now is to send in written comments. You can talk about all of this, but they have to keep a body of information if they're written. So I have already sent in my written comments as a member of the community. not as a board member. I know we're going to put together a resolution, but people need to be sending in the scientists. You know, I told my husband, as a scientist, they'll probably weigh, you know, your comments a little bit more importantly than the average members. But it's really important. I listened on Friday to a PBS special called New Mexico in Focus. There was a panel. One member on the panel, a former state representative, said climate change is the new religion. Now, I was happy that all the other panel members said, no, it's not the new religion. Climate change is based on fact. But there are many differing opinions, and it's good to know what the other side is thinking. So I've already talked with Gwen from Lannel, the foundation, you know, to say, please look at this so you know what other people are saying that maybe don't have a strong opinion. But it is really important to get your comments in to PED. And again, we are not, Santa Fe Public School is not proposing these changes. This is for the whole state, the Department of, or the Public Education Department.
Dr.
And in that-
Garcia?
Oh,
I just wanted to clarify something, that my understanding at the last board meeting, because what we have planned to bring to you on Tuesday is actually a letter that you would be signing, okay, not a resolution. And then I'll submit one also from, the admin, but it'd be great to have your letter. Even if it's just a postcard, even if it's just 2 sentences, as many letters that they get, parents, community members, you don't have to have children, in the schools, anyone can write comment. What I think is important that people don't understand about the next gen science standards is they're inquiry based. So it allows for the discussion of climate change, it allows for the discussion of evolution, and it allows for discussion of the year of the, age of the earth, which I think are the 3 major pieces that are not in there, and that the language has been sanitized. But kids they do the research, the teacher brings up the topic, but then they formulate their own opinion. And so the danger that I see for our teachers, if we do not adopt next-gen science standards and we adopt what they call Ready STEM or something like that, is that if a teacher introduces climate change or introduces evolution, even for just discussion in science, and a parent had an issue with it, it really puts our teachers in a very difficult position. And so there's on so many levels this issue. I hope that they will listen, because it appears, I think I've sent you the articles, the editorials, even the 2 newspapers have come forth and said this is not okay.
Board Member Creel?
just based on what both of you said. Yeah, getting letters in, and also something that I was looking into, and someone could certainly follow up if they felt like it, because I think it's valid, is I believe one could make a very strong case for filing a code of ethics violation against Secretary Christopher Rosowski. When you look at the code of ethics for PED and for licensed teaching professionals, and truth in education is part of it. So one could even maybe make that argument as well. But I'm definitely writing in, because let's face it, they schedule things from 9 to 12 on a Monday, so people can't attend.
Board Member Creel, would you like to make a motion?
Well, it's not an action.
Yes,
My
yes.
item's not
It-
for
it-
action.
Yes, it says possible action.
We did it that way, so any item
Oh.
discussed, you can take action if you choose, instead
Oh,
of
then sure, I
doing
guess.
the head nod.
Oh, okay. Then I would just, I would ask that the board say, you go, Steve. Teaching sounds like a really great, wonderful, low-key way to get our point across.
Do you need a second?
Do we have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Well, thank you, gang. Well, I think it's going to be fun too, right? I'm going to ask Neil deGrasse Tyson. I mean, Diane Ravitch. I mean, I reached out to her at one point.
Well, he did that Chaos series here. I went to watch him.
He's
He
doing it
did
on
a-
13.
Yes, he did that.
Yes,
He had telescopes
Yeah.
out there off of Highway 14, and he took us on on a tour of the sky. And he answered.
He's a great speaker. He's-
Every question until there were no more questions.
He's so engaging. And what if he is in Denver on Thursday and we'll come down here on Friday? You never know until you ask.
Ask.
You know?
I'll help bring postcards so people can write.
Well, I expect this to be very, I'm not promoting this. This is the small teach-in.
Boy, that brings back the 60s. I remember teach-ins. Yeah. And sit-ins, right.
And-
Vice President Cashman.
Postcards might be too late to bring on. I think, I read in one of the articles Dr. Garcia forwarded, I think you have to have your comments unless you're at the hearing. I thought it said by the 5th of October, I'm not sure, by next week.
So you can
But-
bring your, to the meeting.
To the meeting, but I thought there was an article that, because I actually used the website that was there, but maybe
We'll
we could.
clarify. Can you
Could you
Google that,
clarify
Linda?
it? But it's easiest to just hit the, I mean, I know I'm old school in email, and I know that's not what the modern generation uses. Email is archaic for them, but it is easy to just send an email to them, and it doesn't have to be long, and it can be short and sweet, so, but I think there is a deadline when they stop
They're gonna check
receiving
on
it. So we'll know by the next board meeting, but the sooner you can get in, I guess, you don't have to wait. The sooner you can get in your comments, the better.
All right. Any other board discussion? Board Member Carrillo, and then Vice President Cashman.
Kind of a quick question for the, excuse me, for the superintendent. Oh, I don't see Linda Sink here. There was a program that we bought.
She's right there.
I see her.
Oh, my,
She's right there.
oh, you were like, I
She's
see
been
you
there
like.
all, she's
I
been there
no,
all
it's okay.
night. She
I
moved
know.
over one seat.
But Lori's right in front of me, and you were sitting in a place that was right
Yeah,
behind Lori. Okay.
she moved
Sorry.
over one seat.
We bought a program, I want to say it's like Nivian or Navian or, what? Naviance. Are we using that? Are our counselors using that? Because the sense I get from my son relative to counselors and stuff at Santa Fe High is that maybe it's not being used to the extent that we thought it would be. Because it sounded brilliant when it was presented to us.
Was that like a counseling thing?
A
for-
counseling thing relative to kids and colleges and matching up and all that stuff. And we paid a lot of money, too.
I have actually talked with Sue O'Brien, and she's having more training on using it. We did find that, in fact, we've been looking at the use of all of those online programs, from Renaissance to many others that we have, and Tom Ryan and I have been looking at use and deciding what we're going to do and going out to principals and say, look, we don't have use, we can't afford it. So Naviance was one of those, and Sue O'Brien is having PD around it and what's required. So we're going to give it one more year and make sure we're using it.
Thanks.
Vice President Cashman.
Thank you. I would like to put on our next board meeting for board discussion to talk about guidelines for resolutions.
Yes.
And I would like that to just be guidelines for resolutions. We've had in the past month a couple of resolutions that have been brought forward and then withdrawn, but all board members haven't seen them, the public hasn't seen them. So I think we need to talk about when we can get a resolution on, unless it's critical and so time-sensitive that it doesn't allow us to see those resolutions, because the public has a right to know what we're going to be talking about, and we certainly have a right to know what we're going to be talking about. And I just think some people can read quicker than others, and when it's a few words that can make a change, I prefer to do my wordsmithing at home, and not sit here and to try to. So I would like to just have for a discussion item at our next board meeting, guidelines for resolutions.
Sounds like a good idea. Anything else? Holy moly. Hurry up. Anything on, no? Anything on advanced planning? Okay, I'm going to try, oh,
I'm just trying to find that, I'm slow on this.
Yes.
I'm trying to find that article that talked with the,
she's looking
at the
website. Did you find it?
I found,
Or did you find it?
Which-
go
oh,
ahead.
oh.
I'm sorry. All right, go ahead, Ms. Sullivan.
The deadline for public comment on the science standards is the day of the hearing, Monday,
Oh, okay.
October 16th at 5 PM.
okay.
And
Okay.
even when you go and you give your testimony, which I will go give oral testimony, then I will submit my written testimony. But you can email it in till 5 PM on that day, right?
President Price, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia. I looked at it really quickly. I emailed it to Dr. Garcia and Linda Sink, and it says comments may be provided, and I didn't check to see if it said email, but I can read it or I can forward it to you.
Forward it to us.
Okay.
Thank you. Please. Can I have a motion?
Move to adjourn?
Second?
Oh, wait a second.
Otherwise, we sit here.
We get lost in time.
All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? We're done. Thank you all.